You ever had a feeling that someone's watching you? But that is first season. I messed up again, guys. Do you ever hear voices in the wind? Noises behind and unopened doors? Closing your eyes might help for others, but for you, there's always the After Dark podcast. Welcome back, guys, to episode 5 of the After Dark podcast. Or episode 20, what is it, 22 or 21? Vince, how are you doing, man? Hopefully you're having a really lovely night. And as for you guys, hopefully you guys are having a really great weekend and a wonderful evening tonight. You know what I mean? It's fresh outside, you know, and it's very, very spooky because, you know, I want to talk about something. First of all, I had fun playing Fortnite with a bunch of friends. It was nice. It was nice. Second, this week, okay, I was looking at my calendar. Thank you, Fins. The intros, they take me a long time to come up with them. Because, like, I am constantly writing, like, everywhere I go. I take a piece of paper with me, and, you know, just, like, whatever comes to mind, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write this down. You know, and then right now, as we speak, you know, I'm thinking of a new intro for the Halloween special that we're gonna have this month or this following week. But that's what that's what I want to talk about. I was looking at my calendar, right? I have my calendar out right now. Hold up, I lie. There it is. There it is. So I'm looking at my calendar. Halloween is next week on Wednesday. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more episodes for the After Dark podcast. And then, of course, comes a special. Now, you know, we're way past the half point of the month, but I really do want to say from the bottom of my heart and my soul and, you know, my Halloween spirit inside, thank you very much, you know, for listening to the After Dark podcast. Friends, thank you for staying with the After Dark podcast since the beginning, because I know you were there. You were in the first one, the very first one from season 1, and, you know, coming in season 2, we came in strong, and we're gonna go out with the bang on the 30th. But, you know, it's only a week from now, and we're slowly creeping to it. Halloween's it's literally just around the corner. So, without further ado, I have my tea here, ready to go, and we're gonna get things started. Okay. So yesterday, what were we talking about yesterday? Yesterday we were talking about some, I believe it was like the rest of the Eastern European urban legends, right? And how the Dullahan is definitely one of my favorite ones, and I forgot the screaming one too. I forgot it. A banshee. There we go. The banshee is also one of my favorite ones as well. Ah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Fins, I'm gonna do the special earlier than usual. I'm not gonna do it right now because probably, like right now, you know, maybe, I'm not too sure, but I might be out trick-or-treating. Maybe. Alright? But the special is definitely going to be earlier. I'm talking about like around like 12 in the afternoon for me, like 12 p.m. California time. So maybe around there. I'm definitely going to do the special there because, you know, who doesn't want to go trick-or-treating, right? Everybody does. Everybody should go trick-or-treating, whether you're young, old, you know, respect others. Look out for the candies. Candies are, you know, sometimes bad. Eesh. We don't want bad candy. Come on. So yeah. So I finally remember. It's called the Banshee, and the Banshee. You know what? Let's read up about it. Let's read up about our dear old Banshee here, because the Banshee is one of my favorite ones as well. From whatchamacallit. I believe it's like I forgot where it comes from, but she's definitely one of my favorite ones. So, a banshee, uh, modern Irish, banshee, I don't know. Let me see. A woman of fairy mound or fairy woman is a female spirit in Irish mythology who heralds the death of a family member, usually by wailing, shrieking, or kneeing. Her name is connected to the mythology important tumuli or mounds that dot the Irish countryside, which are known as sides, singular side, in Old Irish. Oh, yeah, okay. That's understandable, Finns. School's important as well. We all gotta, even though it hurts, okay? Because I remember waking up like really early, and I'm talking about like around like 6 in the morning early, and it hurted. Okay, it hurted going to school. When I was in my last year of high school, I remember I had to wake up like around like 5 in the morning, like 4:50 ish, because I had to take the bus, and I had this thing called zero period, which I had PE. I don't want to talk about them days. Damn it, them days are horrible. But yes, school is important though. School is definitely important. We don't want the ye old banshee to be coming at us and screaming at our faces, be like, "Why aren't you going to school?" So the description for this woman is: there are many varying descriptions of the banshee. Sometimes she has long streaming hair and wears a gray cloak over a green dress, and her eyes are red from continual weeping. So she's always crying. So this reminds me of La Llorona, the wailing woman, pretty much. So maybe they have a connection. So you see, you get me, Finns. 4:30 sucks to wake up. When I used to go to work with ye old dad unit, I would always wake up like at 3, like around there, 3 in the morning. That's the way he always wakes up, and boy, did it hurt my bones. Did it hurt my bones? But yes, the banshee is an amazing mythological Irish creature that we don't want to ever experience. So I found a website called thethoughtcatalog.com, and I think we've read stories from this same website. The header is 50 plus scary stories that are actually, quote unquote, 100% real. And it's by Chrissy Stockton. It was updated on October 17th, 2018. So, a couple days ago. Right? Let's see what she has in stores for us. Oh, and by the way, the story. Oh, there goes the thing. Give me 1 second. I gotta fix this. The pop filter all of a sudden fell. Maybe I should stop fiddling with it. There we go. So these stories don't have no titles or people that I can address to. So if you hear the story that you see is yours, please claim it. There was a young girl kidnapped in middle school. Okay. There was a young girl kidnapped in the middle of the day on a neighborhood street in Springfield, MO. Someone in the street witnessed the event and tried chasing the car on foot to at least get a plate number and call the police. They sent out an Amber Alert after a few hours, identified the owner of the vehicle and his residence, but by the time they got to his house, they found her undressed body in a plastic tub in his basement, and she had been raped and shot to death. The most fucked up thing was that this guy was a middle school coach, and he had child pornography in his house, as well as photos of young girls from middle school. We found out at my Catholic high school that the murderer was the son of our theology teacher. Our teacher left school for over a week. I'm sure trying to fathom how his own son could commit such heinous crimes. The murderer was sentenced to death this year for the death of the girl, Haley Owens. Her family, as well as the family of the murderer, lobbied the chance Amber Alert laws so they can be issued faster after a kidnapping is reported. Yeah, Vince. I haven't fiddled with that yet. So you're gonna have to give me a little bit more time on the thing. I do have a what am I call it? A come on, it's in my head. Alright, it's a PayPal account. I do, but I'm still, maybe I'll start doing it like on November. Like I said, on November everything is gonna change in the channel. We're gonna have custom thumbnails, not just a screen thing. What else? We're gonna have a new banner on the YouTube channel, and we're also gonna have a new name because, like I said, Last Dinosaur 681. When I made this YouTube account, I wasn't expecting to be making no videos or no podcasts. You feel me? So I want to be a little bit more professional about that. And yes, that's messed up. And this actually happened, So, wow, we're starting out strong today, like really, really strong. But yeah, Fins, a lot of things are gonna change on November, I hope. But yes, so wow. I don't know what to say about the first story. Let's move on to the other one. A guy I knew is a boat mechanic. So one Saturday, he's on his own doing some work on a boat, and suddenly he came to and he's on the ground. He knew there was a water underneath the boat he'd been working on, so he assumes he's been electrocuted, and he's vaguely aware of someone behind him. So he starts yelling, "Help! Help! I've been electrocuted." And he hears whoever's behind him leave. He keeps yelling, and eventually a guy in a neighborhood business hears him and comes to his aid. When he's at a hospital, he finds out he wasn't electrocuted. Someone had hit him in the back of the head with his own mallet. Nothing was stolen from the shop, meaning someone who was never caught was just walking by and spontaneously decided to hit him in the back of the head for no reason. I would have loved to be named Danny, because first of all, I like the show Danny Phantom, one of my favorite Nick shows. Too bad it's gone, but we could always own the DVD. But no offense, unfortunately, my name isn't Danny. Oh, dude, Danny sounds like an early 1950s name. Like a Danny boy. Come over here. Get on my old what are they called? Get on my Bel Air. Let's drive around town and see if we can find a jukebox so we can put a coin in. I like the name though, Danny Dinosaur. That would have been awesome. But yeah, you guys got to be careful out there, especially on Halloween night. You may never know. Like I keep saying on the outro, you may never know who or what is lurking in the dark. Yeah, that would have been awesome. I would have actually liked that name, Danny Dinosaur. Dude, imagine if I was actually called Danny. Dude, I would have started questioning our friendship so much. I would be like, whoa, hold up. Who are you? Are you working for the CIA? But yeah, do be careful, guys. We don't want to be hit behind the head with something out of somebody else's curiosity, And we gotta watch each other's backs. What I mean? Even if you don't like the person, warn them. Warn them. This next one's a short one. It's like a 4 census, I believe, or 3 census, 2 maybe. There was a segment in the news not too long ago about a girl who walked home late at night from a nightclub, I do believe. Oh God. Nah, I don't think I can read this. I am not gonna read the rest of it. You know what? Let's just say that this girl did not do well at night. Oh boy. Let's move on to another one. This one goes, my great aunt was buried alive when she was only in her 20s. The casket was brought up, and when the cemetery had to be relocated, the casket had broken and she was upside down. Claw marks everywhere inside the casket. Okay. Sounds like a mob movie, like a mob movie intro. But you know, there are some cases where actual people, living people, actually been, you know, buried alive, but through different meanings, of course. I mean, you know, the main one is if you owe money to somebody and you don't pay it back, you'll probably be, you know, buried alive, and that's the last thing we want, right? We don't want to we don't want to be buried alive. So watch out for others in the streets, even if you don't know the person. Just give them a heads up. My pop filter all of a sudden decides to not fit anywhere. Hold up, give me 1 second. This is a technical difficulty right here. There we go. That should do it. We move along. Back in the 90s, my mom was on a highway heading home from a friend's house late at night. She was driving a really nice Thunderbird. After a while, this big white van drove next to her, and the driver started performing some very rude gestures. And being young and dumb, my mom reciprocated the gestures. Then the dude pulled up a big Bowie knife to the window. My mom started panicking and sped up to get away, and the van was following right along them. Then the guy tried to run her off the road. Keep in mind, they were probably going about 100 miles per hour. She gets on the exit to get home, and he's still following her. When she does get back to her house, which she shared with my grandparents, she pulls into the driveway, honking the horn and screaming, trying to wake up someone. The van pulls into the driveway just as my grandfather comes out in his underwear with a gun. The dude got scared and drove off. My mom wouldn't leave her house for a month except for school, but never at night. Yeah, Fins, I mean, being buried alive just does not sound pleasant at all, you know? I mean, if Kill Bill has taught us anything, if you've seen the movie Kill Bill, just one punch, or 1 inch, what's it called? 1 inch punch your way out of it, and you know, you'll be fine. But yeah, buried alive sucks. Back then, I believe back when my mom was young, you know, back around like in the 40s or 50s, somewhere around there. She did tell me that there was a priest, right? I think, or what are they called? A father, pretty much, from church. They said that he was dead, but you know, they had like a dead ceremony, right? So everybody was mourning him, everybody was crying, and all of a sudden, this one person sees that he's still alive, right? So he takes out a mirror and puts it like right to his nose, because like if you do that, if you put something glass up against your nose, like you'll fog it up. So he did, and sure enough, you know, way before he was about to get buried alive, they revived him again. So good for him. I don't know where he is now. You know, hopefully he's still alive. If not, rest in peace. You died twice. At least you have that going for you. Also, yeah, kidnapping sucks too, dude. That's why, you know, always keep like eyes behind your head. You know, when you're trick-or-treating or, you know, just coming home from school, just run. You know, if all things fail. But you know, going back to the buried alive thing, there was a story a long time ago in back in Mexico about like people like getting buried alive by accident. So what they did is they actually put a bell, so like the string would run all the way down to the to the casket, right? And of course, if you were not dead yet, you had that little bell thing, so everybody can know if you're alive. And you know, of course, that's creepy, right? So nowadays, people still hear that bell even though they're all dead. I'll be I'll be creeped out. Actually, you know what? I'll be creeped out if anybody would have woke up from the funeral. Especially babies, dude. Not fun. Not fun. But yeah, oof. Very creepy stuff, man. Very creepy stuff out there. I mean, yeah, the baby is alright, but that's still creepy, you know what I mean? Just thinking about the baby just waking up like the Undertaker, you know? Nope. Baby, you stay down. We move on to the other story. This goes. That Netflix documentary about the pizza guy in Erie, Pennsylvania, who had bomb collar put around his neck, then was forced to rob a bank. As a former delivery driver, I was scared shitless the entire time, but also super intrigued by the investigation at the people involved. Wow. I mean, very touchy subject here in the States about bombing and stuff like that, you know? Oh no, really? I mean, I don't know. I like the first one, the Pet Cemetery. The first one, I did recommend it. I forgot when I recommended to watch it, but I definitely did recommend it. The first one. The second one's all right. I mean, it's not that bad. It's all right. Hopefully, the remake is good. Ah, damn. You know what? Now that I'm seeing the chat right now, I totally forgot to put this. Hold up. One second. There we go. I forgot to put that. Damn it. I'm a bad host. I'm still learning. But yeah, hopefully the remake of the Pet Cemetery doesn't stink on ice. I would be very offended. Like, I'm not even kidding. Okay. You know what? These stories are all too real. Let's move on into something more our speed, right? Shall we? We go back to the website called scaryforkids.com, which they have pretty much all the stories that I like from the book Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And this one's called The White Wolf, and it's actually a story, not just one paragraph. It's an actual story. So if you guys haven't read the book Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I'm about to read you some right now. The White Wolf is a scary story for kids about a man who hunts wolves. It is based on a folk tale in the Telltale Lilac Bush by Ruth Ann Music, called The White Wolf. A version of this tale appeared in the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz. In the mountains of West Virginia, there's a little place called French Creek. Many years ago, a man by the name of Bill Williams lived there. He was tall and slim and worked as a butcher. Wait a minute, I think we read this one already. Let's keep going. At the time, West Virginia had a problem. The timber wolves in the area had gotten out of hand. They were killing cattle and sheep, and the farmers couldn't stop them. The state of West Virginia put a bounty on the wolves. They said they would pay hunters $10 for every wolf pelt they turned in. Bill Williams thought it was a pretty good money, so he gave up his job as a butcher and turned his attention to hunting wolves. As it turned out, he was very good at it. Every year, he managed to kill over 500 wolves at a bounty of $10 per pelt. That came over $5,000 which was huge amount of money at those times. After 5 years of this, Bill had killed so many wolves that there were barely any left in the area. They were almost becoming extinct, and a few that were left were smart enough to stay hidden. So, Bill decided to retire. He said the wolves had made him rich, so he swore that he would never harm one again. Wait, I lost my place? I have lost my place. Okay. Every day, he just sat in a local store chewing tobacco, whittling a piece of wood, and telling tall tales about his hunting expeditions to anyone who had listened. Who's this high fence? I just see says hi. Everything went on well for a few years. Then one day, a farmer burst into the store. He said that a white wolf had killed 2 of his sheep. He claimed he managed to get a shot of the wolf and hit it 3 times, but the bullets didn't even have any effect on it. Soon, other farmers began spotting the white wolf all over the countryside, killing their livestock. They had shot it, but no matter how many times they had hit the wolf, nothing seemed to stop it. The people begged Bill to do something about it, but he refused. The white wolf went on killing, and it seemed that nothing was safe. The bloody half-eaten corpse of cows and sheep littered the countryside. Then one night, the wolf came by to Bill's yard and killed his pet cow. Bill was so angry that he forgot his promise to never harm another wolf. He swore he would get revenge, and the next day, he went out and bought a young lamb to use as bait. He took it out of the hills and tied it to a tree. Then he backed off about 50 yards and hid behind another tree with his shotgun in his lap. He sat there and lay in wait. After a few days, Bill didn't return. The people in town went looking for him. Finally, they came across the young lamb. It was still tied to the tree and seemed to be unharmed. Then they spotted Bill. He was slumped against the other tree, but he was dead. His throat had been torn open. There was no signs of struggle. His gun hadn't been fired, and there were no tracks on the soil around him. As for the white wolf, it was never seen again. But some people say that when a moon is full, you can still hear its howl. Oh, the Nightbot? I have no idea what that is. Okay, but yes, moral of the story. Keep your promises, people. Just whatever that promise is, don't ever go back to it. Like, don't, you know. Keeping promises is very important. Very, very important. We move along to another story from the same book, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz, and this one's called Cat's Paw. There was a butcher who ran a successful business. Everyone in town bought their meat on his shop. One day, the butcher discovered that someone was stealing meat from the storehouse behind the shop. Every night, one of his side of beef or his pork chops would disappear. This was a real problem because it was causing him to lose money. He decided he needed to do something about it. One night, after he closed up his shop, the butcher went out to his storehouse. He switched off all the lights and stood there in the darkness, clutching his meat cleaver and waiting for the thief to arrive. He didn't have to wait long, because soon a black cat came slinking through a gap in the door. It was the biggest cat the butcher had ever seen. It jumped up and tried to pull down a leg of lamb that was hanging from the ceiling. The butcher switched on the lights, and the cat turned and stared at him. Instead of running away, it jumped at him and tried to bite him. The butcher was taken by surprise. He swung his meat cleaver and chopped off one of the cat's paws. The cat let out a terrible shriek and began spitting and yowling and tearing around the room. Then it ran out the door and disappeared. The butcher looked down, expecting to see a cat's paw, but instead he saw a pool of blood on the floor. The next morning, the butcher was opening up his shop. One of his neighbors came running down the road, crying out for help. He said his wife had been in an accident. The butcher ran to the man's house to see if there was anything he could do. When he got there, he saw that the man's wife sitting in the chair by the fire. She was clutching her arm and withering around in pain. Her hand had been cut off, and there was nothing left but a bloody stump. The strangest thing about it was she was spitting and yowling just like a cat. The butcher told everybody in town what he had seen, and that night they took the woman out to a deserted field and burned her alive because they knew she was a witch. I mean, I seen chatbot, I believe it's called Nightbot. You know, I seen them like around in other streams, but I don't know how to activate him. Maybe he's already activated. Dun dun dun. You know? That's the scary part right there. So, you think you're streaming, and the next thing you know, someone in the background that keeping you safe from unwanted messages. But yes, the white cat's paw. Wow. A werecat. That's interesting. We move right along to another story called The Little Black Dog. God, please don't show me a picture. I'll look into the Nightbot fence after this, you know. Well, actually, right now, I'm trying to finish the Octo expansion for Splatoon 2. I'm almost done with it. You know, unfortunately, it was a fun expansion. I'm not gonna lie. So, can't wait to see what happens in the end. But yeah, I'll definitely look into Nightbot, Vince. Definitely look into it. I don't know. Maybe it's a widget or something. You know. I'll fiddle around in Streamlabs or actually look up some like YouTube videos on what's going on or how I can do things in YouTube. So thank you for letting me know about the Nightbot, friends. Thank you very much. The Little Black Dog is scary. Okay, no, that's the header. This is the actual story. There was an old man named Billy who claimed that he was being followed around by a little black dog. He said it followed him wherever he went and wouldn't leave him alone. Billy could often been seen hollering and cursing and throwing rocks trying to drive away the dog. All of the people in town thought he was crazy because there was no dog there. Whenever somebody tried to tell Billy there wasn't a dog to see, he'd replied, "Maybe you don't see it, but I do. And I am not any crazier than you are." As the story goes, the first time Billy saw the little black dog was the day he killed Silas Burton. Back in those days, the town was full of robbers and bandits. Everyone carried a gun, and people were always going around fighting each other or killing each other. Billy was a young man back then, and he hated Silas Burton. They had been feuding for years, until one day, Billy saw Silas come riding towards him. As soon as their eyes met, both men went for their guns. Billy managed to get out his first and fired off the first shot. He hit Silas Burton square in the shoulder, knocking him off his horse. The horse got frightened and ran off, leaving Silas Burton lying there in the dirt with a bloody arm and a broken back. His gun had fallen where he couldn't reach it, and he was a sitting duck. He lay there on the ground, withering in pain and begging Billy not to kill him. Billy looked down at him and spit in his face. Then he leveled his gun and killed him in cold blood. Silas Burton's little black dog came running over and started licking the dead man's face. Then it let out a pitiful whine and started barking and snarling at Billy. Still in a murderous rage, Billy killed the dog too and left both of the corpses laying there on the road. Back then there was no law in the town, so there was no sheriff and no deputies to arrest Billy after the murder. He just walked home, drank a few beers, and went to bed. But all night long, he heard the little black dog whining outside his cabin. "I must be imagining things," Billy said to himself as he tossed around in bed. "That dog is dead. I know because I shot it myself." The next morning, Billy woke up. He looked out the window and saw the dog staring back at him. It was waiting for him outside. From that moment on, not a day went by when he didn't see it. At night, the dog would be scratching on his door and barking to let him in. During the day, it would follow him around town. Billy kept finding black dog hairs everywhere. They were in his sofa, on the floor, on his bed, and sometimes he even found them in his food. The whole house stank of dog. It isn't my imagination," Billy said. This is Burton's little black dog." Things went on like that for many years. Then one morning, in the middle of winter, the neighbors didn't see any smoke coming out of Billy's chimney. When they went inside his house to check him up, Billy wasn't there. A few days later, they found his body lying on a field behind his cabin. Billy had plenty of enemies, and at first it seemed like somebody might have been killed him, but there wasn't a mark on him. He was laying on the snow, and there weren't any footprints in there except for Billy's. The doctor couldn't find anything wrong with the body, and he couldn't figure out the cause of death. He said that Billy might have died of old age, or a heart attack, or the cold, but nobody believed that. There was something odd about his death. When the neighbors found Billy, there were black dog hairs in his clothes. There was even a few on his face. It smelled like dog had been there. It smelled like a dog had been out there, yet no one had seen a dog anywhere. Yeah, Vince, that's what Billy gets. I have a dog too. Her name is Evie. She's a bona fide dingus. Yes, but I still love her though. She is very, very special. You know what I mean? If you have beef with somebody, don't go off killing their dog. Damn it. Oh boy. But, you know, he got what he deserved and died an unexpected death. We'll keep going with another story called The Baskets. The dog is coming in clutch for sure, Finn. That's what that man gets, first of all. I mean, it's like that one story I read about the what was it? It was like the dog and the corpse, I think. You know, there was a hunter with his dog going around the woods, you know, hunting for game, and all of a sudden, I think something attacked the dog. Like a corpse actually attacked the human, but the dog actually defended the human. And what did the human do? The human left, leaving the dog, you know, to die pretty much. So, you know, towards the end of the story, the dog pretty much freed himself because morning was coming, but the dog was actually mad with the owner, you know. So, like every chance the dog could, he would bark or just like growled at the owner until one day the dog just had enough and killed his owner because he's a traitor. You know, also, you know, don't betray your dogs or cats or animals because they remember. Even if we think that they have small little brains, they remember. Just like one of my favorite animals in the bird species, the crow. The crow is actually a very intelligent bird because the crow actually remembers your face, first of all, and remembers anybody who's been nice or bad to the crow. So if all of a sudden you would have kicked the crow would remember that for the rest of his life. But if you're nice to a crow, you know, he'll be nice to you for the rest of your life. You know, maybe even become your best friend. I would like to have a crow friend. Yes, I would. Gabriel Fisher spent the evening in the pub with his dog. Another dog story. Here we go. Trudy by his side. It was just before midnight when he finished his last drink and started home outside. It was cold and frosty and as silent as the grave. He thought he saw a figure moving in the distance up ahead. Thank you, Finch, for staying here for a little while, even if it was just for a little while. Thank you, though. Hopefully, you have a really good sleep, and thank you for being in the live stream too for the gameplay for Sunday Fun Days. Maybe I'll keep that as a series, and do something about it. If I don't continue with like modded series for Minecraft, like I gotta find another mod that I like to continue like in the modded Minecraft series, but not Jurassic Craft though, because Jurassic Craft just bit us in the butt and we can't do anything with the dinosaurs, unfortunately. But if I do find another mod, I'll definitely get it out there. And maybe it'll be on Sundays, maybe not. Maybe it'll just be on Wednesdays. I don't know yet. But anywho, thank you for coming, Vince. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully you have a great night and a safe one too. He caught up to her. He looked to see who it was, but it was dark, and she was so bundled up against the cold that it was hard to see her face. Trotty started to growl at her. "Good evening," Griffith said. "What brings you out so late?" The woman didn't answer. They walked in silence for a while. Then Gabriel said, "May I carry your basket?" Without a word, the woman took it off her shoulder and handed it to him. Inside the basket, he heard a small voice say, "That's very nice of you." And that was followed by a wild laughter. Gabriel was so startled that he dropped the basket into the ground. The white cloth slipped off. Out rolled the woman's severed head. He looked down at the head and stared at the woman. It's your head," he cried in horror. His dog Trotty gave a howl and fled in terror. As the woman stooped down and picked her head up, Gabriel took off running too. The woman chased after him, holding her head in her hands. He could hear her footsteps behind him. He was gaining on him. Then he looked down and noticed something rolling along the side beside him. It was a severed head. With a ghastly laugh, the head rolled in front of him, trying to trip him up. Gabriel managed to jump over it. He could hear the slap, slap, slap of running footsteps behind him. Then the head sprang into the air and sank its teeth into his ankles. Gabriel screamed in pain and shook off the head. He tried to run faster, but the woman's body and her head stayed right on his tail. The head sprang into the air again and bit his other leg. He let out another scream and kicked the head away. Just then Gabriel came into a small stream. With a mighty effort, he leaped across and kept running, not daring to look back until he got home. His dog Trotty was waiting at his house when he returned. Gabriel looked back into the darkness, but the headless woman and her severed head were gone. I like this website because it has the stories. I do have the books on me. I have the actual physical copies of them. Unfortunately, they're in a closet that I cannot have any access to because there's like a lot of things in front of it. So it's a good thing I found this website because my initial vision of this was actually just reading a bunch of these stories, and hopefully I could find more scary stories in the in the internet. But the thing I like about this website too is that it has comments, and I like to read some of them. So that was a basket. We read the new horse already. Let's go read a story called Wonderful Sausages. Who doesn't like sausages, right? Like the sausage links, the franks, hot dogs. I like hot dogs. I really like hot dogs. I want hot dogs tomorrow. Hot dogs. What else? Jambalaya, I believe. But I think jambalaya has the other type of sausage. But anyways, I'm getting offhand. This is not a cooking podcast. I mean, if it was, I don't think the food will get to the table. So we continue with the wonderful sausage. Many years ago in New Orleans, there was a German man named Mans Muller who owned a sausage factory. The couple were very hardworking, but Muller was growing tired of his wife. She had become old and wrinkled before her time, and he no longer found her attractive. He started having an affair with the younger woman. One dark night, Hans Muller had an argument with his wife. He lost his temper and killed her, stuffing her body into the big meat grinder in the factory. Then he ground her up into sausage meat until nothing of her was left. To keep his evil deed a secret, he told everybody that his wife had left town. Muller mixed the new sausage meat with the ground pork and seasoned it with salt and pepper. He added some sage and thyme and a bit of garlic, and to give it a special flavor, he smoked it in the smokehouse for a while. He called his recipe Muller's Wonderful Sausages and sold it as a delicacy. There was such a demand for this wonderful sausage that Muller was sold out. Before he knew it, he started keeping an eye out for people who could turn into tasty sausage meat. One day, a plump woman came into his shop. Muller knocked her out and ground her up. Another time, a little fat boy came by. Muller picked him up and shoved him in the grinder and turned him into mincemeat. One by one, all the children in town began missing, and so did their kittens and puppies. Nobody had any idea of what was really going on. Things went on like this for years, but Muller started getting lazy. Customers began complaining about finding bits of bone and cloth in their sausage. One woman even bit into her sausage and found a gold wedding ring. His girlfriend heard the gossip and broke up with him. What? Hold up. One woman even bit into her sausage and found a golden wedding ring. His girlfriend heard the gossip and broke up with him, telling him she didn't want to see him anymore. What? That's confusing. Anyways, we'll continue. One night, Muller was working on the factory when he heard a mysterious thump coming into the boiling vat. Then, as he watched in horror and disbelief, the bloody ghost of his wife emerged from the grinder. Her head was crushed into a pulp, her brains were dripping out down her face, and her eyeballs were hanging out. Muller started shrieking in terror and fled from the place. The neighbors heard him scream and his screams and wanted to know what was going on. When they went into the factory, they found a stack of dead bodies piled in the storage room, just waiting to be ground up into meat. When people saw this, they realized that he had become of all the missing children and puppies and kittens. The neighbors called the police, and then when they arrived, they found Hans Muller cowering in his factory, screaming and crying and waving a big butcher's knife around. He was raving like a maniac and kept saying his wife was coming out of the sausage grinder to get him. Muller spent the rest of his life in the insane asylum and eventually committed suicide. The ghost of his wife was never seen again, and neither has his wonderful sausage meat. Isn't this like a double-edged sword, where, you know, Muller was the actual, you know, criminal, killing people, even animals, you know, but wouldn't the people be his accomplices too because they were eating it? Wouldn't that make them cannibals as well? Who knows? But it is about that time that I do remind you guys, if you guys are listening to my podcast right now, live, or whether it be in YouTube replay, thank you very much. I do appreciate you. And two, you know, subscribe if you like it. I would like to I'll let you know. But most importantly, please, people, please don't play with your phones in the car. You know, if you're listening to my podcast in the cars, please make sure the car's off or parked. You know, don't be messing around with the car, because I don't want you guys to get into an accident. You know, accidents happen when you play around and are not focusing in the road. So please don't mess around with phones in the car. You know, if you have a passenger with you, if you have somebody in the passenger seat, you know, give the phone to them. Be like, hey, I want to listen to the After Dark podcast season 2, episode 6 or 5, 4, you know, or 7, I don't know. And, you know, give them the phone and put me on speaker or put me in the aux. Hook me up to the aux cable and hear me in the four corners of your car, you know. So please, once again, don't play around with your car. Don't play around with the phone in the cars. Don't drink and drive. Don't smoke and drive. Please, just focus on the road. Please. Onegaishimasu. Anyways, we go on to another story called The White Gown. We ain't gonna stop this horror story, baby. I think we read this one already. Let's read it anyways. There was a young woman who was very lonely. She desperately wanted to find herself a boyfriend. The only problem was that she had very little money, so she never went anywhere and never met anyone. One day she received an invitation to a party at an expensive hotel. The girl really wanted to go, but she didn't have any nice clothes to wear. For such an occasion, she didn't even have enough money to buy a new dress. Why don't you buy a dress in the secondhand shop? The mother suggested. The girl went down to the secondhand shop not far from where she lived and managed to find a beautiful white satin evening gown. It fit her perfectly and the price was surprisingly cheap. She immediately bought it and rushed home. That night, when she arrived at the hotel, the girl looked so radiant and attractive that all eyes were on her. Every single young man at the dance was desperate to meet her. She danced with one handsome man after another and was having a wonderful time. She began to feel that her luck was changing for the better. Soon, however, she began to feel dizzy and faint, and she had trouble staying on her feet. She asked one of the young men to help her downstairs and have her into a taxi. When she got home, the girl crawled upstairs and laid down in bed. The next morning, the girl's mother knocked on her door, but there was no answer. When the woman opened the door, she found her daughter lying lifeless in bed. She called the doctor, but it was no use. By the time he arrived, the girl was already gone. The doctor examined her, but he couldn't understand what had killed her. So he asked the coroner perform an autopsy. It turned out that the girl had been poisoned by embalming fluids. Tests were done and traces of embalming fluids were found in the white gown. Because she was dancing so much, the girl started sweating and the embalming fluid entered within her pores and slowly stopping her blood from flowing. Police questioned the owner of the secondhand shop. He said he had bought the white satin evening gown from an undertaker's helper who had stolen it from a body of a dead girl just before she was buried. Wow. Just like that one story about the shroud. You know, you don't want to steal nothing from the dead. Don't want to do that ever. But, you know, who can actually listen? We go on to another story called The Church. There was a fellow named Lemley who wasn't afraid of any living thing in the world, but he was scared of pretty much anything that was dead. The only reason he didn't whistle as he passed through the graveyard was that he never went past the graveyard at night. He always stayed well away from places like that, even if it took him miles out of his way. People knew him used to tell stories about the time Lemley got lost in the Devil's Fork It was a dark, uh, it was a dark and stormy night, and was, and he was cycling home in his bike. Flashing of lightning, and Lemley caught a glimpse of the old, hardened place. It was just an old log cabin that had been destroyed for as long as anyone could remember. They said a woman had been murdered there years ago, and there was rumors that it was haunted. Lemley started cycling for all he was worth and tore off into the road. The next place he came was an old dilap- dilap- dilapidated church. The front door was hanging off its hinges and the windows were all broken. By this time the rain was coming down in sheets. The thunder was rumbling and the lightning was striking across the sky. So Lemley knew he had to find shelter somewhere. He thought the church would be pretty safe. After all, it was a house of God and it still had a good roof on it. Lemley lifted up his bicycle under a tree and stumbled into the old church. It was very dark inside, but he felt his way down the aisle and sat down in the pews. It was nice and dry and warm inside, and he began to feel better. But pretty soon, there came another big flash of lightning, and Lemley saw something that chilled him to the bone. He wasn't alone in the church. Not by a long shot. It looked like there were people sitting all over the place. They were dressed all in white and just sitting there with their heads bowed. It slowly dawned on Lemley that the church was filled with dead people, all wearing a white funeral shrouds they had been buried on. For a moment, he just sat in the darkness, rooted to the spot. He was frozen by fear. Then he let out a terrifying screech. It took off running down the aisle. Just as he came to the front door, Lemley ran smack into one of the ghosts. He fell down and the ghost went. All of a sudden, there came another flash of lightning, and Lemley saw that they weren't ghosts at all. They were sheep. It was an interesting story. You know, a church full of sheep. The things that the imagination can do to one, you know, it's like I said back in season 1. The mind is so strong, you know, that if you think something bad is gonna happen, it's most likely gonna happen. You know? Ouch. Scratched myself. Ah, I heard it. But, you know, same thing with this man. He was so afraid of the dead that, you know, he didn't just second guess himself and double take. He immediately saw that the church was filled with ghosts, and that wasn't it. This next story is called Footsteps. From the time I was old enough to notice things, I didn't like that house. I was afraid of the upstairs. I never felt safe there. Mama always kept the lights burning at bedtime because I was afraid of the dark. One evening when I was 9, my sister was downstairs and I was sleeping in bed. She was expecting Mama to come home at any moment when she heard the front door open. My sister called out, "Hello, Mama?" But there was no answer. She heard footsteps, but they didn't sound like Mama. Her footsteps were light, but these were heavy, like a man. Who's there?" My sister called, but there was no reply. The footsteps continued up the stairs and wandered into the bedrooms, but when my sister called out again, "Who's there?" the footsteps stopped. She was young and afraid, but she knew I was asleep alone up there, so she took the lamp and searched all the rooms. She even went into the attic, but she didn't find anyone. My sister went back down the dining room, but as soon as she sat down, the footsteps started again. They came down the stairs through the dark kitchen, and then the door of the dining room, where my sister was sitting, slowly began to open. She was scared out of her wits. "Get out of here," she screamed. The door slowly closed and the footsteps moved through the kitchen towards the front door. She heard the door open and shut, so she ran into the window to see who it was. There was nobody in sight, and there were no footsteps in the fresh snow. That was when she realized that whoever or whatever was walking in wasn't human. She shuttled in the couch. She huddled in the couch and waited for Mama to come home. Not long after that, we moved out, but something strange happened before we left. My sister and I were in the living room when all of a sudden we heard terrible groans. It sounded like someone was in agony. The groans seemed to be coming from the cellar. They were so loud that our dog started howling and the hair stood up on the back of our necks. She would always go anywhere with me, but when I tried to coax her to come down to the cellar with me to investigate, she wouldn't. The cellar was well lit, so my sister and I went down, following the groans until we came to a little alcove, and there were groans ceased. I wanted to dig right there on the spot, but there was no time. I've always felt that if we would have found the case of all our troubles. Perhaps somebody's bones were buried there. We moved away soon after that, and Mama would never let me ask the people living there today if they heard anything. We were all glad to get out of the house. So even the mom heard the footsteps. It's very interesting. Very, indeed interesting. Oops. Where did my... Oh, there it is. The attic. That's the other story we're going to read right now. The attic. There was an old man who lived all alone in an old house in the woods. He kept to himself mostly and rarely went out to town. He spent all day in the forest hunting for food, and when it came to dark, he would come home and cook his dinner. One dark night, the old man had just finished his meal, and he heard a strange noise. It sounded like something was moving around the attic. He picked up his gun and loaded it, trying not to make a noise. Then he took off his shoes and socks and slowly climbed to the attic stairs without making a sound. Slowly the old man tiptoed on the creaking steps until at last he reached the attic door. For a moment he stood outside just listening, but he couldn't hear anything. Then he suddenly threw open the door, rushed inside, and let out a blood-curdling scream. Why did it scream? You scream too if you step in a nail, barefoot. That was interesting. I mean, you don't want to walk home barefoot, especially if you made the house. You stumbled upon a nail or something. Oh boy. We'll read one more. This one's called Night It Rained. One rainy night in October, a man was driving past a cemetery. He saw a young boy walking in the rain. The man stopped and asked the boy if he wanted a ride. The boy approached the car. His face was pale, his clothes were wet, and he was shaking like a leaf. He opened the door and got inside the passenger seat without saying a word. The man felt sorry for the boy, so he gave him a red sweater to keep him warm. The boy's teeth were chattering and he was still shivering. Then, when they got to the boy's house, the man stopped the car. The boy got out. The man told him to keep the sweater and said he would come back for it the next day. "What's your name?" asked the man. "Timmy," the boy replied. The next day, the man went to the boy's house to pick up his sweater. When he knocked on the door, a woman answered. The man introduced himself and asked if she was Timmy's mother. "What's this about?" she said. The man explained that he had given Timmy a ride the night before from the pouring rain, and he had given him a red sweater to keep him warm. The woman stared back at him, and her eyes welled up in tears. "I'm sorry, you must be mistaken," she said. "My son Timmy died almost a year ago." The man apologized and left. He was very confused, and his head was spinning. He drove to the cemetery and found Timmy's grave. Lying on top of the grave was his red sweater. Same story about the taxi cab in Japan, you know, picking up a woman to go to a destination just to come back. That's very interesting. You know what? We'll read one more just because we have read that one. And this last one's called Just Delicious. There was a man who loved to eat. Every day, he went home at noon to eat lunch with his wife. The man was not a good husband. He was mean, bad-tempered, overbearing belly, and his wife was afraid of him. She was a shy, timid woman who did everything he asked. If she didn't, he would often beat her. One day, on his way home for lunch, the man stopped at a butcher shop and bought a pound of liver. He gave it to his wife and told her to cook it for dinner that night. His wife had prepared pasta for lunch, so he sat down to eat it. While the man ate his lunch, his wife told him that a rich old woman in town had died and her body had been brought up to the church next door. The man was not interested in what she had said to him. He was enjoying his plate of ravioli, which he washed down with a nice glass of wine. He didn't even want to stop eating long enough to tell her to shut up. Finally, he said, "Enough. I've got to go back to work." That evening, the wife began preparing for dinner. She seasoned the liver and cooked it slowly in a pot with vegetables and broth. After a while, she lifted up the lid and the liver looked like it was done. So she cut off a small piece and popped it in her mouth. It was delicious. The flavor was very rich and vibrant. She thought it was the best meal she had ever made. She tasted another piece and another and another. It was so good she couldn't stop herself, and before she knew it, the pot was empty. Then she thought of her husband and she began to panic. He would be coming home soon. What would he do when he found out that she had eaten all of the liver? He was not the type of man who would understand. He would be very angry, and she would remember the beating he had given her before. She did not want to face that again, but where could she get another piece of liver that late in the day? Okay, I know where she's going. It was then that she remembered the rich old woman who was lying alone in the church next door, lying in the open coffin waiting to be buried. After finishing his meal, her husband got up at the table, patted his belly, and said, "That was just delicious." He had never had a better dinner. The salad was drizzled with olive oil and just the right amount of garlic and vinegar. The fresh garlic bread and the tastiest, most tender liver that almost melted in his mouth. He looked at his wife. "Aren't you going to have some?" he asked. "I'm not hungry," she replied. "You finish it." That night they went to bed. The man had fallen asleep, but his wife was laying in the darkness, unable to close her eyes. All she could think about was what she had done. Just then, she thought she heard a voice in the distance. "My liver," it said. "Who has my liver?" It sounded like the voice of an old woman. Gradually it came closer. "I want my liver," it said. "Who has my liver?" The wife listened. Was it just her imagination? Was she dreaming? The cry came again and again, piercing and terrible. "Give me back my liver," it said. "Give me back my liver." "No, no, no," she whispered. "I don't have it. I don't have your liver." Now the voice was right next to her. "Who has my liver?" it asked. "Who has my liver?" The wife was trembling with fear. She pointed at her husband and said, "He does." Suddenly the wife awoke in a cold sweat. She was so frightened she could barely breathe. She couldn't stand the strain any longer. She shook her husband, and when he woke up, she confessed everything. She told him how she had eaten the liver he bought. She told him how she had crept into the church next door. She told him how he had slit open the belly of the corpse, deftly cut out the liver, and brought it home to cook it. Her description was so vivid that her husband could almost see it happening before his eyes. As he listened, he grew more and more angry. Then she told him about the ghostly voice she had heard, and he grew more and more fearful. The man was horrified of ghosts. I'm the one who ate the liver, he said. That means she will be coming for me to wreak her vengeance. He got out of bed without a word and went downstairs. His wife sat in bed, wondering what he was going to do. A few minutes later, she heard his footsteps coming up the stairs again, and when he appeared in the doorway, she saw what he was holding, a knife in his hand. She screamed and screamed. Later that night, the husband crept into the church next door. He approached the open coffin and placed a fresh new liver in the belly of the corpse. Then, he went home and climbed into bed. His sleep was never disturbed again, and nobody saw his wife again. Damn! Don't steal a liver from a dying person, or don't eat it. So, moral of the story is, don't do anything with the livers or anything that has to do with dead people. You don't want that. So, don't eat dead ghost liver, or don't steal a shroud. Don't do anything with dead people. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for coming. I really do appreciate it. This today was kind of awkward, starting off with these like little short stories that I was reading, and apparently they were real, and I don't know. I don't know what to say. I seriously do not know what to say about it, but it is what it is. So but yeah, we ended up with on a good note with the old what are they called, scary stories to tell in the dark. One of my favorite books. Like I said, I do have all 3 books, but they're in a place that I cannot reach it, so I have to read it off ye old internet. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, you can do so. I am an artist. I'm a digital artist. I'm a traditional artist. I'm a well-rounded artist, and soon to become a painter. So I normally post every Wednesday and Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. California time, but since it is October, I am partaking in the Inktober challenge, and I am pretty much, drawing every day and posting every day new drawings of, words and stuff like that. So I am following the prompt right now, because the things that I want to draw for the rest of October, it comes pretty much later in the day, in the month, actually. So towards the end, so probably like in Halloween. All right. So if you guys want to see my drawings, see my concept art and all that stuff, go for it. Instagram's in the description below. Also, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so as well. You can chat, send memes, send pictures. See if you guys have any horror stories that you guys want to share. Horror stories, scary stories, urban legends, fables, folktale, anything you guys want to share that's scary related. Send it to me over on Twitter with the hashtag The After Dark Podcast, or hashtag The After Dark Podcast S2 for season 2, or hashtag TADP S2. Again, it's hashtag The After Dark Podcast S2, or hashtag the TADP S2. That Twitter is the best way you guys can communicate with me for now. Maybe later on I'll be more open enough to do something else so we can all get along, because like I said, we're all friends here, right? So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. By the way, before I forget, movie recommendation time. The movie that I recommend for tonight it's a 2-hour-long movie, but trust me, it's a really good one. It's called The Wailling, a 2016 drama fantasy, supposedly, but let's read the wiki out. So The Wailling is a 2016 South Korean horror film directed by Na Hong Jin, produced by Soo Dong Hyun and Kim Ho Sung, written by Na Hong Jin, and it's distributed by 20th Century Fox Korea, and its release date was May 12, 2016 in South Korea. It runs for 152 minutes, okay? But trust me, it's a really darn good one. I really do like this movie. Like, yeah. And like I said, Asian horror films is just like the next level of horror, because you have the regular horror you see here with Hollywood and stuff like that. But then you also have the higher ups, pretty much the Asian horror movies that really take a lot of courage just to watch. But I am recommending this one because I was gonna watch it again today, but I'm like, I've already watched it. I already know what the hell's gonna happen. Damn it! Oh man! But it is a pretty good story, pretty good movie here. If you guys don't mind reading some text at the bottom, I mean, if you guys are fast readers, this is not gonna be a problem for you guys. But yes, go and watch the movie. Go and watch the movie and tell me what you guys think. I would definitely like to know. And on that note, make sure to always bring a flashlight. Never walk alone on an empty street. And always, double check your surroundings. Because you may never know who or what can be lurking after dark. Peace out, everybody. Have a great and safe night. And a great, safe weekend.